Hello everyone, I am Bradley Sward, Associate Professor of Computer and Information Science at the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And this video today is going to take a look at a simple platforming game structure using GameMaker Studio 2.3. Let's just get right to it. Everyone knows what a platformer game is, right? Everybody knows Mario. And Metroid, and you name the game, right? Like, you guys know a million more games than I do nowadays, because all my games are from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s for the most part, because in my head, I live in a 2D world. 3D is fun and all, but I love 2D games. So the whole idea of how to make a platformer work, or I guess I would say make it work the more correct way, is to set up what we call finite state machines with our objects. And you've probably, if depending on where your level of expertise is, if you're coming to my video from the outside world, you've probably seen other people make these kind of finite state machines. I might be a little different. I like to be a little more thorough and a little more robust when it comes to setting up the things I'm setting up. But let's say, what is a finite state machine? And I say, just think about it. What is a vending machine? You go and you put some money in a machine and you press a button. But does that machine give you a soda every time you push the button? I only witnessed that one time when I was over at the college before coronavirus took over. That student walked away with a ton of sodas. I don't know how he got lucky. But every other time, no. A normal working vending machine only pays out one time when you put enough money in to buy what you're supposed to buy. But how does the machine know? And it comes down to the machine is put into a state machine. The machine knows how much money's in there. It knows these other details and this and that and everything that's going on. And when some kind of input comes into it, it knows what to do based off that input. And so that's, it's a very simple thought process. But it's making this thing work in reality can be quite a problem. So thinking back to 1994, I believe it is, whenever Super Metroid, one of the best games ever made, came out, assembly language, Super Nintendo, you could see here one person, Osamu Kubota, was needed to make every aspect of our Samus character jump around and roll into balls and do, and shoot and all the other things that Samus does. One person was in charge of that. And in a modern day world, that doesn't work out. We don't have, the games nowadays. If that was the case, we'd have 50,000 people working on, every video game. And it feels like there's a lot of people working on the new modern games, but it's not that many people. And so object-oriented programming and mostly free to use game engines like GameMaker or Unity, Unreal, and Crysis, and all those other engines, they generally reduce that time dramatically because technology has advanced to the point where we don't have to put as many details in and work as hard. We can work smarter, not harder. And so what we're going to do here is just set up a very simple state machine for a character. I'm not going to call it Samus. It's just going to be a very bland colored box. And we're going to set up these different states. So, the four states that you see here of the five are probably what you think of. You think of a standing state, a character is standing around, idle state. The character can be walking around left or right. The character can be jumping, and I denote jumping and falling as two completely distinct states. Maybe you don't feel that way, but the behavior is truly different. Maybe gravity is pulling you down the same, but the behavior of what to do or what happens and how do you get out of this state from jumping into something else is actually different than the falling state. So we'll see, and we'll get there. So those four states, and of course you can add as many states as you can imagine. How many states does Samus have? How many states do characters in the more modern games today have? And the fifth one that you probably aren't thinking of is some kind of initialization state. And that is exactly what you might think it is. I can set up my character to have hit points and health and magic and items and all sorts of stuff, but I want to make sure that I initialize that and set the character up in a specific way, and then afterwards I pretty much never come back to that. Maybe I'll reset things by touching and picking up items and such, but I shouldn't get all my health back and everything just for the sake of just being. So the initialization state is its own thing here. And so we're going to create a base class. I always call it like hero base class or something, and that's going to be the base for all of these states. Because at the end of the day, like if I was colliding, if this character collides with a wall or something like that, well, it shouldn't just be if the standing state hits a wall, if the walking state hits a wall. It's the if the character hits a wall. That's the whole point of inheritance and polymorphism. It all comes down to this is-a relationship. I am currently sitting on a chair on my butt talking to you guys about this stuff. I could get up and stand and walk and jump, but I'm still Brad, right? It's like my base class would be Brad, and every state that I could get into and every state that I can get out of would be derived from that, and it still holds that is-a relationship. I don't change my identity by standing up or walking or falling down the stairs or whatever it is I'm going to. Okay, so that is the PowerPoint demonstration part. So now let's talk, before we even get going into GameMaker, so I have the 5 states, and we can just start talking about, and you absolutely need this in some shape or form. I would basically be doing this on a piece of paper. I am old, right? I am older than dirt at this point, and I like to have a piece of paper to write things on. Notebooks and whatnot, and I would be writing this out rather than have this on a piece of paper because it's easier just to change things up with a pencil and a piece of paper than it is to for me anyway, than it is to change things up on some kind of tablet or an Excel worksheet or some other anything. But this is where you have to talk out and work out the different states of your objects, and you just try to get a feeling for what's going to happen. I've done this a few times, so I pretty much have this down pat. But once you start adding more to it, then you can get yourself stuck. Just like that vending machine that I was mentioning earlier that somehow kept giving out soda after soda after soda to that one lucky student. It got itself stuck in a state, couldn't figure out how to get out. Somehow it was programmed into there. And you could very easily do that if you don't account for everything that can occur. And that's that's what a bug is, right? Something you did not expect to happen in your program. And there you go. So just thinking outright, whenever we set up an object in our room, we're going to set it up with the init in the init state. That's the object we're going to physically place in the room. And that's the one that's going to initialize hit points and, you name it. And pretty much all the other variables that we might need and all the other constants and everything else for walk speed, jump speed, gravity, you name it. That's all going to go here in this init state. And immediately after I initialize everything, I am going to go into the stand state. So that I don't have to do anything necessarily to go from here to here. And so the game starts and my character will be in the stand state. And so now the sky is the limit for what I'm going to do. And you could notice that there's only 3 other states this thing can get into. And now we're never going to go back to the init state. That was only there to get everything going and to init everything that the object, all the attributes of the object. And now we're ready to move on to the stand state. And from there, we just go, well, what happens to go from place to place? If I want to move over from stand to walk, well, what's going to happen is I press left or right. Okay, right? I mean, that's basically what needs to happen for me to go from a stand state to a walk state. And the same kind of goes, do I have access to like a circular shape? Like a circular arrow? Kind of, yeah, kind of, there we go. So let's see, let's test this out. Let's see, can I make this? Oh, that's cool. That's a cute little thing. And so the same thing goes here. As long as I am going left, right, and I am in the walk state, I'll continue to go into the walk state. But as soon as I let go, then I should go back into the standing still state. So basically, if you want to think of this, you could think of this as a no key, but we're not going to truly think of it that way. We're going to think of it as a no left and no right key. And I think this is a good starting point before we jump into, literally, figuratively, the jump and fall states. I think this is a great start to get 3 states going just on a simple basis, get a character that can move left and right, and then from there we can add the jump and the fall. And by putting jump and fall, that we basically change up a few of the things inside the stand and the walk state as well. So okay, so we have our beginning, we have our start. 10 minutes into this video, we finally can get going and we can start making our game. Okay, so I only have 5 sprites set up in my game already, and because I didn't want to spend the time to do that. I've already spent 10 minutes talking and blah, blah, blah. So I have a different sprite for each of the 4 states. And your characters, like when you go out and you advance on this, and you take this and you add graphics to this and animations, you probably are going to have the same thing where you have a left sprite and a right sprite and a jump and a fall and who knows what. So it makes sense to use different sprites. And here, especially since this is a teaching demo, to have different colors, when and if things go wrong, you can see at least what state you're in, because you'll be able to see, oh, I'm in the fall state because I'm seeing a yellow character on the screen, and you can then figure out what went wrong, and at least you know which object you can go into to make everything, or at least define and debug, define where things went wrong. So I only need these 4 sprites, and I am using 40 by 80 for the size, 40 width, 80 height. You don't have to worry about the centering, but you do have to worry about the collision mask and make sure you're using the full image, 039, 079, for every one of these. And with GameMaker 2.3, it's harder to make sure because you have to. There's an added check. Maybe they'll fix that. Maybe it is a bug. Maybe it's not. But that you have to physically go in and see, there you go. This one is, for whatever reason, this one is not working right because I started it tiny and I changed it around a little bit. And I'm going to have to manually change this to be the full image. Because as we've discussed in previous videos, if you screw this up, then nothing will work right. And especially when you have animations and things move around, your character is going to jump around on the screen and your character can get stuck in a wall. And that is the kiss of death, right? No one's going to want to play a game where they get stuck in walls and do all sorts of crazy things when they're playing. So, okay, it's 40 by 80 and 39 by 79 for all of them. Okay, good. So 4 different colors. You can pick whatever you want. The colors, I just picked arbitrary colors. Stan was red for stop and green for go and, and yellow for caution and orange for caution. Whatever. It is what it is. So my wall is 40 by 40. And I'm going to place these in the room. And I don't have any objects set up just yet, so let's go ahead and do that. So I was discussing before, the wall is easy. Set up objects. Okay, the wall is easy. This thing is going to be solid. Those of you who have seen my other videos, you know I am a big fan of move contact solid, so that's how everything is going to be working today. Use the wall sprite. This doesn't have to need any parenting, at least for now. This is just a basic setup. If you are doing more complicated things with locked doors and all sorts of who knows what kind of destructible walls and non-destructible walls, you probably will be parenting your wall structure as well. But for today, plain old wall is good to go. And we discussed that just because the hero is in a fall state or the hero is in a stand state, it doesn't mean it's not a hero anymore. It's just, it's substated. So we need that parent class just so we can say, this is my hero. And I like to call it base class just because then I know what it is. I know it's the parent. I know it's the base for everything else. And it should, just to be on the safe side, it should be solid. And for right now, it doesn't need any other code or anything else. It's because we don't have anything else based off this just yet. But then now what I can do, I can create a new object. And this one I can duplicate over and over and over again. And I could say, okay, here's my hero init state. And you can call it hero init. And when I do this for real, I take the init off so that the game designers and everyone using that, when they're, they see that they can use the hero object, because maybe you get a little scared. You go, what is init? Oh my goodness. If you don't, if you're not 100% involved in everything that goes into the coding of this project, you might be scared to use that. But I'm going to use it today. And it parents to hero base class, and I'm going to use the hero init sprite. Where is it? Our hero, it doesn't have one, but since it's only going to exist for a brief moment in time, I'll use the hero stand sprite, because it's going to be going from init to stand very quickly. And so for right now, let's just set up the other 2. I can duplicate this so I don't have to do all the extra little work here. I can say, okay, I'll do hero stand and change the color. Oh, again, I don't have to change the color on that one anyway. And then I can go ahead and duplicate, and I can have a walk state and change the color on that one so that it is, oops, that's not it. Go into here. There we go. walk state gets the walk sprite. Okay, so I have stand, init, and I can see that I've parented everything correctly because you can see I have the 3 children right here, the init, the stand, and the walk. And now it's time to just get the room set up. I'm just going to keep a very simple room structure today. I need to go ahead and change the grid settings. I made everything multiples of 40, so just to keep it simple. And then since I'm doing that, I might as well make it 720p down here. There we go. And now I can just play around adding objects. Oops. Remember, you can hold down Alt while you drag, and you'll create more than one object at a time. Save yourself some carpal tunnel. And then you can just kind of do whatever. We'll see if we don't know about gravity yet, so we don't know if this is actually going to be something nice or just something that the character can't actually progress through or anything like that. But this is perfect for now. We don't need anything overly complicated. And as I was discussing before, when we go to set up and put an object in the room, like which state are we going to put this thing in? We're going to put it in, we're going to create the init state. And I'll put the character up there to start. So if when I run my game, you can see this is what I've got. And of course, I don't have any code attached to it just yet, but you can see that I have this going, and that's what you see is what you get here for our editor. And so the objects are set up, and physically, we do not actually, unless you want to change the design of this room, we don't have to go back and change the room for the rest of this video. We don't have to change the sprites. It's all just going to be writing the code so that, oops, not that, so that the Excel worksheet, so everything we have here is written into code, and at the end of the day, we have a document, we have an artifact that we can keep. So when, if people want to change things, we don't have to go back and remember all those little details. We have this in front of us, and we can go and tinker to our heart's content, and then go ahead and recode everything. Okay, so we discussed, let's talk about the init state. So we discussed that what goes on in here, nothing really happens between when it goes from init to stand. So at the end of the day, you could do this all in a create event. And we will be playing with this quite a bit, actually, more than you might think, because we're going to be putting variables and constants inside here as we go. You can touch this part, and then down here is don't touch this. Can't touch this. So don't touch this. And honestly, all this does, since we discussed that somehow I need to get from state to state, I can say instance change, and I can say I want to change over into hero, stand, and do I want to do perform events? True. The way I do things using this init state, you never have to worry about this perform events activity here. Do I want to call the create event for the standing hero object as I transfer from hero init into hero stand? And so it gets really complicated if this is variable. But if you do things my way, you never have to worry, and you can always just go right to the create event with no care whether or not you're going to blow out variables or change things in your game that you're not meaning to change. So that's good here. And so just thinking up front, I'm going to give this character a constant, or there's nothing's constant in GameMaker, but I'm going to give it a walking speed, and I'm going to set it equal to 5. And of course, I get a warning right now since I haven't used it yet. And that's pretty much, for right now, all that we need, right? Like for the 3 states that we have for our character, the only thing is we're going to use left arrow key and right arrow key. We're not going to generalize the key presses and things like that. We're just going to keep it simple. But the rate at which the character can move is something that we want to be able to change, the designers especially, somewhere along the line, so that they can tweak everything to make everything as fun as possible. And me on the programming end, I could give 2 licks if it's 4 or 5 or 2.8. My fun, again, my job comes in giving the designers all those hooks. Okay, so that is it. So, and you wouldn't really notice. So maybe I can show you this. Maybe if I go into my hero init and just change the color of the sprite just so you can see that. I'll make it yellow, and it's in the room as yellow, but when I run the game, it should immediately turn red because the character turns, and trust me on this, it went immediately. You never saw the yellow. It went right to red because this character is now in the standing state, because that's what I did. I took the init state, I did the create event, I set up the walking speed variable, and I now have this instance change so that it changes into the stand state. Okay, so now, so we basically, if you think about it, I keep going to this, maybe I should close this thing out. Yep, save that. And then go into here and go, we've essentially done this. Let me see if I can find a big X here that I can just use. Something to cross out and say, we did this, it's done. There we go. I think, ooh, that looks cool. Oh yeah, look at that. Make it black. There you go. We did that. I did that all myself. I'm so proud. But anyway, so we did all of this, and now we're kind of ready to kind of do the other 3 events before we move on to the jump in the fall state. Okay, so let's try it out. So if I'm in the stand state, all right, let me get in there. I'm in the stand state, and you have to do this on a step-by-step basis, because every game frame, like you can't just be like on create, you're like, well, what happens in 2 seconds if I go, oh, I want to start walking? So you have to think every game frame, you have to be like, if keyboard check, and this is not, notice there's all these different kinds of keyboard checks. I just want to see if the key is pressed down right now. I don't care if it was just pressed in the moment, I just care that I'm holding it down right now. So it's not a press event, it's just a keyboard check. And since I'm using left and right arrows, I'll say VK right. And just for the sake of, I'm just doing this, I'm future-proofing this, thinking of this up front, and I go, well, what if later on down the road, I have different things for moving left and different things for moving right. Don't put these together into one if statement, say if keyboard check right or left. Just keep it as it is. And so there's no movement here, right? Like when you think of the states, what does a standing state mean? It means idle. It means the character is not moving. So if I made the character move inside of the stand state, you'd be like, well, what is the point of having a stand state if the character is moving? So this is where I will put another instance change, and I'll say, okay, now you go into the hero walk state. And again, I can always say true with my tried true lesson plan here. And so now you can see I'm in the state, I'm in the red state. I went from yellow to red, and I press left or right. I can press up, down, I can press other keys, but if I press left, and now I've moved over. I can't get out, there's no code. But you can see that I've moved into this hero walk state. And I'm just going to be pedantic since I have the moment here. And say left always comes before right, right? Left and right. But that's it. That handles this case right here. At least up top here. What happens if I press the left or right arrow key? Well, there I go. And so now the last 2 things to do come from the walk state. Notice there's one event that triggers the init state. There's one that triggers from stand, but now there's 2 that come out of walk. So let's go in there and let's fix that up. Oops, go to GameMaker here. Okay, so I'm gonna borrow this since it's gonna be very, if I press left or I press right, I'm gonna keep walking. So let's just do that part, my step event. And I say, okay, now this is where things change. I say, okay, instead of changing state, this is where I physically will say, move contact. And I don't have my famous move slide solid function in here, but if you did have that, this would be a good place to change that and make this a move slide instead of a move contact. But left is 180 degrees and walking speed. Remember that guy? I know it's weird, right? Because it's sitting over here in the init state over here, but we can use it here because we created it in the init state, moved over into the stand state, now we're in the walk state. And we can say something like this. Okay, and and then right is 0. So now, at least for now, we can't get out of the state, so I can press right and press left, but I can keep moving. Notice when I let go, I probably should go back to the stand state, and maybe you'll notice it's like Roadrunner and all that. Even if you notice you're hanging in midair, you won't fall to your death. There's nothing I can do right now to get that character to go down, but that's what the jump and the fall states that we'll add here in a couple minutes. That's what that's all about. So that covers this. I keep doing this. Hold on. I keep doing this. Let me go to here. Okay, there we go. So we handled that. This is the actual movement, left and right movement. So we handled that. And the only thing left is, well, if I don't press any of those two keys, I should probably go back into the stand state. And I can make that happen by switching this up and making this an else if. And then just make this a plain old else. Because if I don't press left and I don't press right, and we will modify this in a little bit, well, then I want to go back and say instance change. And then I want to go into the hero stand state. Okay, and now let's make sure that, yep, no errors. So let's try it out now. And now I should be able to turn back to red. I walk, I walk, I walk, I stop, I turn red, I walk, I turn red, left and right, it doesn't matter. So I go between those two states, and I go, and it works very smoothly right now. And so there's, you can try to jam this thing all you want, but red and green and whatever. But for right now, that's perfect. So everything we wanted to accomplish inside of the Excel worksheet here, we have gone ahead and done. Like pretty easy stuff, right? So now the complicatedness comes from me not trusting gravity in GameMaker, and now with these two extra states, the jump state and the fall state, how do we maintain sanity, and how do we make sure the jump and you don't jump through a ceiling, or you don't fall through a floor, and all sorts of other things. Or in our case, how do we make it so that if I walk off a platform, I start falling? So that's a big plus here too. Okay, so now we can go ahead and fill in the other details for all the other states. So you basically have to really think this down at a low level. I mean, this is like, you've ever had to do the peanut butter and jelly test, where you have to just write down on a piece of paper how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then everyone tries to follow those instructions dead on. It's the same kind of idea. You can forget one little detail, and it can cause some big problems, because others like what if I didn't open the jar and then I just try to jam a knife into to go get some jelly? Like, oops, that kind of thing. That can jam up the whole works, literally and figuratively. So coming out, like, the init state is done. There really is nothing else that we need to be able to do here. And now the stand state, we can go into the walk state, and we already discussed this one. Like, I'm, especially in the walk state here, that I'm in the walk state, and I go, try to transfer this here. And I can go in the fall state. Oh man, why is this so, come on. There we go. Why is this so bad? And you go, well, what is happening here? Of course, there's no ground under my feet. I'll just say no ground. And maybe I'll move this over, add some spaces. Okay, so if there's no ground under my feet while I'm walking, I should start falling. And as much as you don't think about it, if there is destructible terrain, it's the same deal. And it just, yes. Oh no. How do I make this? You just deal with, you just make it work, right? Come on, Brad, make it work here. Okay, so if I'm in the stand state, and there we go, and there's no ground, I'm not going to win any awards for my artwork, but I don't care. So if I'm in here and I'm in, no ground, then I'm going into the fall state. So if the floor under me breaks, then I'm good to go. And so when I'm in a fall state, like I'm falling down, well, how do I get out of that? And now I've worked myself into this craziness here. I can go backwards now, and I can go from fall to stand by hitting the ground, right? I mean, so that's basically, oh man, I should have thought this out a little better. But anyway, so now I can say I can get out of my fall state. Here, I'll just do it this way here. So I just do it twice over. Just make this, rotate this, and do all sorts of, oops. Here we go. Having fun with this. Anyway, you get the point. You get what I'm trying to do. When I hit the ground, I go from a fall state into something, and I might as well go into the stand state, and then the stand state can get me back into the walk state if it needs to. And so again, please forgive the horrible, horrible work here. Let me get rid of this. You don't need this anymore since we've handled at least the text-wise. And so, okay, so I've got my fall to stand. I've got my stand to walk. And then how about the jump state? They say, well, I definitely can go from stand to jump. Get this big and rotate it by just pressing the space bar. And the same with the walk state. All I have to do is press space bar, or just whatever button you've applied to the jump. Same thing goes here. I press space, and I go from stand state to walk state. And it's really just as easy as saying, if I press the space key, go into jump. And so, and I'm forgetting a few little things here, and I'm not forgetting. I'm just trying to get away from the physics of everything right now. But there's two ways we go from the jump to the fall state, and one is the easy one. So I think of the jump state as, when I think of the jump state, I think of it as the up portion of a jump. So like as gravity is fighting you and you're getting slower as you're jumping up, 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 up. In my case, I got a quarter second of time before I hit that apex. That's the jump state. So one way to get out of it is to hit the apex of the jump. And for that brief moment in time, all the forces of the universe are equal. And for that brief moment in time, you don't go anywhere. But that's just the way things go. That's just the way gravity and physics works. And so then the other way you could go ahead is if you hit your head. If you hit your head on the ceiling or on a wall or something, well, then you immediately go from the jump state to the fall state. And so this is a good point where you just start, and again, we're not applying the physics, we're just thinking out high-level details of this, and we're going, did we neglect anything? And at this point, I do not believe we are neglecting anything. There's three ways out of the stand state and a couple ways back in. We already handled the walking portion of walking, and now just the jump. You can't go from fall to jump or jump to walk or anything like that, so that's pretty much handled. Two ways out. I've never found a third way. If you find a third way, I'd love to hear it, to get from jump to fall. And to go from fall to something other than that. And we're not even accounting for double jumps or anything like that. I hit the ground, and I'm back to the stand state. Okay, so let's try to make this thing work, and let's see what we can do. Okay, so first thing I need to do, I'll create these objects, and I got to make sure to parent them. I will use the jump sprite, hero jump, and then I will duplicate this for hero fall. Hero fall has a different sprite. There we go. Okay, and then I like to put a knit up at the top here. You can do it. Well, if it's not gonna go, it's fine. Just to say I have the different states. So my fall state, and again, I have to make sure I parent everything correctly. So I can go ahead and parent to the hero base class, or I can go to the hero base class and parent everything. And I can say, oh, let's add a child. Init. What do I have? I need the jump. There we go. I have my 5 states. 5 states are tied into this hero base class idea. And now we can go back in and kind of retrofit some of these ideas. So I'm in the stand state. If I press left or I press right, or, oops. And if I press spacebar, I will go into the jump state. That's it. Just one little thing here. And then the same goes for the walk state. So now this changes things up a little bit. Here I have if, else. This probably should go in and be another else if, or maybe not. That's if I'm pressing left. No, I don't think it should. Because left and right movement, so like if I'm pressing left or right, I can't jump? That doesn't seem right. That seems terrible. So the idea of the order of operations starts to matter here. Because right now I'm move, jump, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, do I move into the jump state? Do I move into the stand state? And there's this little thing that GameMaker used to do. It would break out of a function immediately when you would call an instance change. But it doesn't do that so much anymore. So you have to go in here, and just for the sake of, I think it's called exit. You have to put an exit. We can go in here and see. They include it. Yep, they include the exit after every instance change, and it just makes sure that GameMaker doesn't go ahead and do other code. It just exits out of the function immediately. So for right now, just to be safe, we kind of have to go back in to our init state every time you see an instance change, nothing yet here, every time you see an instance change, you put an exit in here. And I think just for the sake of, because again, if I'm pressing left or right, I should not have to worry about my jump. My jump should take precedence over moving left or right, so the jump should go first. If you put it in the other order, if I press left or right, then I won't be able to jump from this state. And agreed, it won't happen very often where you press both keys at the exact same moment in time, but if it does happen, it could get very frustrating. So then there's that, and then for the walk state, every time that's why I put this up front here, and then this goes down here. And let's see what happens now. Let's see if I can get myself orange. I can orange myself. I walk around, I'm standing, I jump, I press, there you go. I'm orange. I try this again. Oops, didn't mean to hit a breakpoint there. And I try again, and while I'm walking, one way or the other, yep, there we go. So I've handled it. Everything seems to be working pure and true. So coming back to our idea here, coming back to this, feeling this idea, this is done, and this is done. And we're making a lot of progress here. I did discuss earlier that I absolutely hate the way gravity works in GameMaker. Maybe someone can prove me wrong one day. But I like my way better, and it's more robust, and it gets me where I need to go more robustly than anything else. But we need to understand kinematic equations. So this comes back to physics, which is mathematics. And so we have to understand the idea of the kinematic equations in order to make our own physics and make this thing work properly. And so you see all these complicated formulas. Thank goodness we only need the easiest one. We only need that my speed at a given time is equal to my initial time plus how much time has gravity been affecting me. And that's what this is basically saying. My v, my velocity, my speed at any time at a given time t is equal to my v0, my initial jump speed, plus the amount of time times the gravity component. And as you'll see, this is actually pretty simple stuff, and it's going to work very nicely for us. It's just the hard part is figuring out what is my v0 and what is my a. T is easy. T is number of game frames that's progressed since I jumped. However, the other two you really have to tinker with to make sure that the gravity looks and feels how you want it to as a designer. Because there are many different ways. Super Mario 2 is a very floaty. Castlevania is very, you can't move in midair. Once you you're jumping, you either jump straight up or you jump with your whole momentum. You can't bring yourself back. So there's very many different ways to do this. But this is the formula I'm trying to use here. And so coming back, I'm going to have to define, and just to keep this, I'm going to define it as V0 and A inside of my GameMaker code here. That goes back into my init state. And just looking at this, I'm going to say, okay, I have a V0. I'm going to call it V0. And I'm going to call this, and I'm going to say that is 20. I like to use 20 as my starting point. You'll see why when we do this. And I'm going to use my A as 1. And again, I wouldn't be using V0 and A if I was doing this by myself, because I know I would call it jump speed and accelerate, or in gravity and things like that. But I don't. But just for the sake of keeping consistent, if you go to look up this stuff online and go look up the kinematic equations, this will hold more true. So again, by changing these, we change the shape of the jump. Okay, just to say that, like, if I make this number larger, the character will jump higher. If I make this number higher, he will fall to the ground faster. So there's a tweak. There's always a tweak between the two. And so now in the jump state, I'm going upwards. Okay, so just to say I'm going upwards, and just say that t value plays a big role here. T equals 0. Right? Because there were three components to that, right? V equals V0 plus A times T. And so the T is, the A and the V0 are going to be constants when it comes to the jump, but the T is going to vary because essentially, time is being changed every game frame the character is in the air. Okay, so this is all I need to do in the create event for the jump. And then the step event is where the character will be physically moving. So I can say, come back to this formula one more time. My var v is equal to my v0 plus my a times my t. And you have to manually change the t yourself, so I'll increment t down below right at the end. Okay, so now we'll see here, I'll do a move contact solid. And I'll go up 90 degrees, and I'll go v. Okay, let's make sure, is everybody happy? No. What's not happy about this? Let's see. Unexpected syntax error. V0 plus a times t. Var? What did I do wrong? Seriously, what did I do wrong? The only thing I could think of is, maybe because, no, I don't know what. T. That's okay. V0A, that's quite fine. I don't necessarily care. I just want to get this thing going. But now in the jump state, okay, move context solid. Let's try it out. Oops, it's still not happy. Invalid token. Did I not parent? No, I'm parented. 0. 0 and A. Did I use VO accidentally? No, I'm going to have to go find out what stupid thing I did. I'll let you know in a second. Did I actually do anything wrong? Once I erased V0 and put it back, it seems to be happy again. I don't know. But anyway, so here we go. I'm in this. I hit spacebar. When I hit the spacebar and I go into the step event, my t is going to be set to 0. And I'm going to set this equation. I'm going to be incrementing t. I'm going to be changing things. Let's just see. Things are going to go to hell, but let's see what happens. Okay, I jump. There he goes. That's not what I was expecting, right? And so what's happening here is this thing's only getting bigger and bigger. I use positive values for everything to make it easy on us. I say 20 and 1. These are all positives. So I have to tinker with this formula to make this thing slightly, to reduce down so it actually looks like a jump. So let's change it from the v equals v0 minus a times t. That's our first thing. Boop. And he disappears. That's exactly what you expect, right? When you hit the top. Haven't you ever jumped, play basketball, jump, and then you disappear for the rest of your life, and no one ever finds you again. So what's happening here, remember the way move contact solid works. As this value decreases and reduces down to 0 or negative value, you're telling GameMaker that I want to move 1,000 pixels. And so you're like, oh my goodness, crazy stuff here. So if my v value is greater than 0, then I'll do this. But, well, let's see what happens. I go, okay, but now what, right? Now I am stuck hanging in midair. That'd be great, for, again, sports and all that, but that's not true. But this is where I hit the apex of my jump. And so if the v value is negative or 0, I want to change into the fall state. So now, so there it is, and it turned into yellow because now that's the fall state. And that's perfect. That's hitting the apex of the jump. And technically, I guess we don't have to put this, we could put this here. I don't know. We might have to change it later. Make sure to put an exit in here when we change over, just in case we change our code later. Thank you, GameMaker 2. But this pretty much covers. You calculate what speed the character should move in this game frame using kinematic equations, do it, and then say, okay, next time you'll probably go a little less, and so forth and so on. And so that handles the first case here. Oops, that's not the first case here. And hold on one second. Let me find my here. This handles the first case where I am at the apex of the jump. And so now let's handle the fall state, and then we'll come back and do the hit. We'll do all the other states, because this is the final stuff. The final thing here is basically the same code, slightly modified to handle hitting your head and hitting the ground. Okay, so the same basic principle holds here. And now this, we're going to flip this around. I'm going to steal this for the step event and for the step event for the fall state. Just going to just drop it in for now, step event. Okay, and I'm also going to go back into the create event and say, and reset my t to 0. Because what happens is when you hit the top of your jump, your momentum has stopped. And so it doesn't matter if I hit my head or if I just naturally hit the apex of the jump, that the fall state just starts from a t of 0, because it's like if I'm applying this function, the initial velocity doesn't matter anymore, because the initial velocity is 0. Because I've hit the apex of the jump. We just showed that. This thing stops when this thing hits a negative number or 0. So we could just cut through the junk there and just say this. And now, since this will always be a positive number, since time will always be positive, and the acceleration will always be positive, I don't have to worry about this if statement anymore. I can just do a move context solid. We'll have to fix this up here in a second. But I can say move context solid, and I can say 270 for down. Get rid of this here. And now, if this works out right, you should be able to fall. Oh, maybe not here. Let's see. Interesting. Why, if I set this thing to 0 and acceleration, why does it fall immediately? So let's put it. I can put a breakpoint in here and run this and see what the v value is on a frame-by-frame basis. I can go and hit spacebar and jump. Okay. V is 0. Ah! Stupid GameMaker, right? So V, the reason why the character immediately falls to the ground is because, again, if I tell the GameMaker to move 0 pixels, it wants to move 1,000 pixels. So, terrible, terrible GameMaker thing. But what I can do to get around this, make sure I'm out of my debugger, is I can add a very small number. I'd like to add 5 zeros and a 1. That makes it non-zero, but it doesn't affect the calculation in any true way. So now we go, there we go, boop. And I wonder, as this thing gets bigger and as that number gets bigger and bigger and bigger, I'll talk, you know, I'm not a talker as much as I have to be for my job here in my career. But I wonder, nope, it's never gonna, if I set gravity and gravity got to be a larger and larger number, the character would eventually go through the floor because he would basically just teleport through the ground and go off to infinity. But by using this move context solid, it doesn't matter how large this v value gets, the character will never go through the ground. So this is a good way of avoiding that kind of problem. But now you notice I never get out of that fall state. Right? Like I get there, I can't move around, I can't re-jump, I can't do anything. So now I say I have this instance change. I'm just going to modify this and check to see if there's a wall under my feet. And if there is, then I will change into the stand state. As we discussed earlier, if you go back to the PowerPoint thing. So I have to have some kind of if statement, and if that is true, if I've hit the ground, then I want to go into the stand state. And the function for this is, what I want is place meeting. I don't care what object I collide with, as long as I know yes or no, did I collide with any wall. So if I say place meeting, x, comma, and I want to go 1 pixel under my feet. I want to see what's under my feet 1 pixel and see if I can stop. So y plus 1. Pretend to move 1 pixel over and tell me if there's any walls in my way. Right? That's what place meeting does. Place meeting returns a Boolean true false, and it just looks 1 pixel down and it tells me is there a wall, yes or no. And so now let's try that out. And I'm back. And now I'm back and I can move around and I can jump another time. And there we go. We got it. So that's all there is to this. Try to move context solid and then see if there's a wall under my feet. And if so, do whatever you got to do. Put me back into the stand state. And so maybe you've noticed, we'll fix this up. That was one little thing we didn't notice. That now that we can jump and walk around and do things, like I cannot move in midair. Once I jump, I'm done for. So we'll have to fix that up. That is not in the initial state diagram that we set up here. That is not part of this, right? But it is, but we'll fix that up. But we accomplished hitting the ground and getting out and making it so that we can get out of the state and we can walk around again. But notice, oops, no ground, oopsie. So let's fix that up. It's variations of what we just did for everything else to finish up the job here. So I can borrow this code, and now I can go over to the stand state. I have all these if statements, and I could say if I press spacebar, if I do this, if I do that. Well, how about now if there's nothing under my feet? Because I presume that there's always going to be a wall under my feet, floor under my feet. But if there's not, I'll go into the false state. Now I'll borrow this because that's what I'm going to copy over and over and over again. And just to show, since I did put this in the stand state, I'll go over to my wall and I'll add just a dev mode cheat. So I can say if mouse left pressed or mouse left down, instance destroy. So now you can see I can move around, I can walk, I can now destroy the blocks. Or not. Wait a minute, what did I do? Left down. Wall. Instance destroy. Oh, I'm having a day. What is it? No? Not happy? Oh, maybe the wall. Oh, jeez. The wall. See, this is where GameMaker is a lot of fun. I'd be willing to bet dollars to donuts. My wall sprites collision mask. Yep. My wall sprites collision mask doesn't apply here because for some reason it got janked up. So I have to do it manually, and I got to do 039, 039, and now can I go ahead? There we go. Oh my goodness, GameMaker. So you can say I can move around. Oops. But now, right now, you notice while I was walking, it didn't do it, but only when I stopped walking. I can move, and like I've got, now I fall. And that's exactly what I was trying to say, that in the stand state, when I get to the stand state, if there's no wall under me, then I go ahead and jump, or I go to the fall state. And the same thing applies to the walk state. Oh my goodness, all this stuff here. I give you all these opportunities to get out, but I probably should fall before I stand. And you could play around to see, and I don't 100% know if there's any situations where the order of these if statements matters, or truly matters, or can cause very slight and very temperamental bugs. But now I should be able to walk and fall down. There I go. And again, I can't do anything more. And when I'm standing, I fall as well. And he goes, poor guy, off into the great beyond. And so that is all there is to covering that aspect of things. When it comes to coming back to our flowchart and handling the no ground effect. Okay, there we go. So then the last item, other than being able to move while I jump or I'm in midair, is hitting my head. And that is very similar to what I just did here. And I have to be in the jump state to make this work. And I'm in a step event, blah, 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 if, this, that, whatever, hero fall. Or I can put this here. But this time I have to check above my head. So I have to go 1 pixel up, which is counterintuitive that I'm going to put a -1. And I have to say, if I do hit a wall, go right into the fall state. So now I have an opportunity here. I can go here. I go jump, fall, jump, fall. I can jump, fall, jump, fall. So otherwise I would jump to the apex of the jump, but immediately hit, and it would look like you're for a second or so that you're just hanging in midair until gravity pulls you back down. But if you hit your head on something, you should fall immediately back down. Okay, so that covers pretty much everything else with the basics here. That is the whole chart. But again, we forgot something. We forgot what to do if I press left or right. Oops. So just to say, just if I press left or right, I should be able to move. And again, that's purely your call. You could have Castlevania jumps. You could have Mario jumps. You could jump many different ways. But I'm going to just have a Mario jump style. I'm not going to worry about it. I don't necessarily, this is introductory stuff for you guys. So I could say I basically just borrow the code from the walk state and throw that in. Let me find the walk state here. For handling left and right movement. And so while I'm in midair, with all these other if statements, my goodness, right? Everything's getting complicated. If move, blah, blah, or fall. And I say, okay, what if I just throw these in here and just see what happens? And if you want to, you could have midair speed. If you want to change it, maybe in midair you can't, you can't move as fast as you could if you were walking. You could do a lot of things, right? I'm just trying to say. So now I can physically go ahead and move in midair. Whoops, I only did it in the jump. I did not do it in the fall state. But you can see that I can move like that now. Let me go back in. Go back into the fall state and handle that. Putting that stuff in. Now I can move around while I'm in midair, either jumping or falling. And I have a character that can move around with destructible terrain. Right? That's pretty cool. So that pretty much covers this video. If you're in my class, you're going to be doing a homework assignment where you'll be creating a new state and adding to the state machine. And if you're not in my class, you should be doing that anyway, because this is very basic movement. What if I wanted to hang on the ceiling? What if I wanted to roll into a ball? What if I wanted to climb the walls? So many other things that can go into this. And this is why I like a piece of paper more, because my piece of paper will not look as junky as this does, because you really have to understand the different states. But at least I have an artifact. When I go in and my boss, or you just go, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could have this new state? You can figure out, how do I get into that state and how do I get out of it, and then go in and code it. And now your documentation is up to date and your game is that much better. Just understand, though, as always, if you add more stuff, all the interactions get more and more complicated, because right now there's only 5 states. And so I only have to check the 5 states. But what if there are 20 states and I wanted to add something? I have to make sure that state works with every other state. 20 states to check versus 5 or 6. So the complexity is rather linear here when it comes to, stepping up your game here and making things work. So that pretty much covers it as always here. And I just wanted to say thank you for sticking out this video as always. And if you have any questions, the next step would be to add animations before you add anything else. And it shouldn't be too challenging for you guys, because especially if you have the sprites already set up with the correct dimensions and you don't have to worry about anything crazy happening, it should be pretty easy. But if you have questions about that, maybe I'll make another video in the future about that. But always email me at swardb@cod.edu. Great way to get a hold of me. Also, YouTube comments here. I haven't used YouTube or Facebook in years. But anyway, comments down below. And as always, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So moving on to bigger and better things. Thanks for sticking it out with me. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.